Hey everyone. So today the Academy Award nominations came out, and among the Best Picture nominees is A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic. So I'm happy about that. Still think about that movie a lot, and definitely do still want to see it in the theater a second time. Also, really pleased that Timothy Chalamet, I think I'm saying his name right finally, got nominated for Best Actor. Edward Norton nominated for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of Pete Seeger. And the person who played, I'm forgetting her name, Monica, I'll put her name in the titles here. Monica something, who played Joan Baez, I thought was absolutely amazing. And she got nominated for Best Supporting Actress. So really happy about that. I don't know. I think it's probably my choice for Best Picture. I've seen a lot of the nominees. Maybe I'll do another video about that when I've seen them all. And I still think it's probably the best movie. It's my favorite. It's the one that meant the most to me when I was watching it. So anyway, I thought, why not count down the best Bob Dylan closers? And by closers, I mean the last song on a record. The guy knows how to leave a room. The guy knows how to leave you relatively speechless when an album ends. I kind of got this idea when Mazzy did a video a little while ago on Bob Dylan epics. And when I hear Bob Dylan epic, I think a lot of times of these closing songs. And he meant epic in general for Bob Dylan, which I would argue there's a whole bunch of them. So not really going to get into that. But I did pick 10 album closers by Dylan that I'd like to talk about. And they're kind of from all over his career. They're ones that stick out to me. Some of them I think or a lot of them, most of them I think, all of them probably, are among his best songs. Period. He's got so many, but these are killer ways to end an album. So let's begin. The first one, and again, these are in no particular order other than the order that I wrote them down. So first one is a song off of this album. It's 1981. It's Bob Dylan. It's the third album in his kind of born again phase. Started with Slow Train Coming. Then there was Sade, which is definitely the most evangelical of the three albums. And the album that kind of ended it, the last album in this trilogy, is this one behind me. Shot of Love came out in 1981. I think it's a pretty good album and definitely warrants a re-listen for people that might have dismissed it. And if you're coming new to it, keep an open mind. I think it's one of his most underrated records. And especially part of that is because the last song is so good. It could read like a religious song, but it also just works as a song with tremendous lyrics, tremendous meaning, tremendous, I think, staying power within the Dylan canon. Then onward in my journey, I came to understand that every hair is numbered like every grain of sand. Okay, that's one of the closing lines from a verse. Another one that I'll read here is the ending. I hear the ancient footsteps like the motion of the sea. Sometimes I turn, there's something there. Other times it's only me. I am hanging in the balance of the reality of man, like every sparrow falling, like every grain of sand. Definitely encourage anybody who has not heard this song or hasn't heard it in a while to check it out. Every Grain of Sand, Bob Dylan from 1981. Next up is the closing song of Bob Dylan's album, one of his albums from 1965. It's Bringing It All Back Home. This is the album that I guess first really bothered the folkies. I think probably the one before, Another Side of Bob Dylan, probably did too, just because the subject matter was much more personal, not so political like the albums before. This album, Bringing It All Back Home, is half electric, the first half, and half acoustic, being the second half. The last song on the record is called It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. If you saw the documentary, or not documentary, the biopic, Complete Unknown, there is a powerful scene in here where he is singing this song, and it does come across as like a kiss-off to what he was in his former life, what people were expecting of him, and it's just a very powerful song. Last verse here. Leave your stepping stones behind, someone calls for you. Forget the dead you left, they will not follow you. The vagabond who's rapping at your door is standing in the clothes that you once wore. Strike another match, go start anew. Yes, and it's all over now, Baby Blue. I can never get enough of this song. Whether it's in the bootlegs for his 1965 tour, and I think he was doing it in 66 too, like at Manchester, or Royal Albert Hall, he does it. one of his finest songs, I think, in a hell of a way to cap off Bring It All Back Home. And to think that this song has to follow It's Alright Ma, I'm Only Bleeding, and does it brilliantly. So yeah, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, Bob Dylan, 1965, Bringing It All Back Home. Skipping forward a year, 1966, this is the album Blonde on Blonde. This comes right after the movie ends, or shortly after. He was moving at a pretty fast pace back then in the 60s. And this is a closing song to a double record. It takes up an entire side of the double record, side D. It is Bob Dylan's Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. The story with this song is that the band was learning it as he was playing it. They kept looking at each other kind of in disbelief as it went into yet another verse. I didn't check the time for this video, but I think it's something like 11 minutes long. Definitely not, didn't light up the pop charts or anything. Killer song, just complete devotion to this woman who would become his wife. I don't even know where to begin with picking a lyric from this song. It is so rich and so poetic, and to pick part of it out, it just doesn't quite feel right for this song. But I encourage you to check this song out, Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowland, the last song on his double album from 1966, Blonde on Blonde. Fast forward close to 10 years later, 1975, Bob Dylan's releasing his album Desire, and the last song on Desire is a song called Sarah, which is pretty much a response to Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowland, which we just talked about. Sarah is a pretty devastating song. His marriage is falling apart. Might have been almost over by that point, but he's singing this song to her as like a plea, remembering times with their family experience, remembering times when they first met. And the story goes that he was singing the song only once in the studio, and he locked eyes with her. She was in the control room, and he was looking right at her as he sang this song. It's really powerful stuff. I laid on a dune, I looked at the sky when the children were babies and played on the beach. You came up behind me, I saw you go by. You were always so close and still within reach. Sarah, Sarah, what made you want to change your mind? Sarah, Sarah, so easy to look at, so hard to define. I can still see them playing with their pails in the sand. They're under the water, their buckets to fill. I can still see the shells falling out of their hands as they follow each other back up the hill. Sarah, Sarah, sweet virgin angel, sweet love of my life. Sarah, Sarah, radiant jewel, mystical wife. And it goes on from there. It's a beautiful song. Almost feels like you're a voyeur when you listen to it. It's that intense. And if you know the story of her being there when he's singing it to her. But definitely one of the best album closers, I think, of Bob Dylan's career. He's got plenty of them. The last song on Desire from 1975, Sarah. Now we jump forward 22 years. This is Time Out of Mind, Bob Dylan's Time Out of Mind, his comeback record, 1997. Kind of released at a time when I think most people didn't expect new material from Bob Dylan, or at least not really new, compelling material. He had done 2 covers records of old standards, blues songs essentially. And then before that, he had an album Under the Red Sky that wasn't so great. Before that, he had Oh Mercy, which was great. He reunited with the producer Daniel Lanois from Oh Mercy, put out this album, Time Out of Mind. Just surprised everybody, a much more mature record. He's got a much deeper voice. He sounds like he's seen some things, and he's letting you in a little bit on it. The closing song, Highlands, was especially surprising at the time because it feels like you're listening to some Desolation Row type thing. So Highlands is like a long conversation, long dialogue he's having with this waitress. And the music doesn't really go, it's kind of a blues shuffle. It doesn't really take you anywhere in particular. It just sort of provides a background for this long story. And it's not something you want to listen to every day, I don't think, but when you do, it's kind of a fascinating song. And I think for me, it's fascinating that he was comfortable enough to do a song like this, that he was back in his element enough to let his guard down and do a song like Highlands, closing out Time Out of Mind from 1997. So we're at the halfway point with this, and next up is a closing song from his 2006 record, Modern Times. Modern Times can get really, really dark, and Dylan just goes for it on the last song. It's comes out, it breaks sort of the blues pattern that a lot of these songs have. A lot of his most recent material, kind of the mod bob tends to have, and the lyrics are dark, really dark, but he just pulls you in with his storytelling, his voice. The suffering is unending. Every nook and cranny has its tears. I'm not playing. I'm not pretending. I'm not nursing any superfluous fears. Ain't talking, just walking. Walking ever since the other night. Heart burning, still yearning. Walking till I'm clean out of sight. As I walked in the mystic garden on a hot summer day, a hot summer lawn. Excuse me, ma'am, I beg your pardon. There's no one here. The gardener is gone. Ain't talking, just walking. Up the road around the bend, heart burning, still yearning, in the last outback at the world's end. Yeah, real cheery stuff. Don't listen to it too late at night. Next up, we're skipping forward quite a bit to 2020, and it's Bob Dylan's album, Rough and Rowdy Ways. I think it's one of his best albums of the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. It's a killer record. Part of me wishes this closing song wasn't even on this record and was released separately, because I feel like the album itself doesn't get enough attention, because this song is so strong, so striking, so memorable, so vividly written. It takes up all the energy, and it seems to be all that anyone talks about, but for good reason. Okay, it is a killer song. It's called Murder Most Foul. It's Bob Dylan going through different events in the world, really since, he begins. It was a dark day in Dallas, November 63, a day that will live on in infamy. And he talks about President Kennedy being assassinated. His central argument seems to be that the world has really gone to hell since that event. And boy, does he have a lot of details. I'm not even going to begin to get into all this, but he mentions the Beatles, Woodstock, the Aquarian Age, Altamont, Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm just skimming this. Miss Scarlet, I Don't Give a Damn, The Acid Queen, Tommy, Patsy Cline, Wolfman Jack, Cadillac, Billy Joel's Only the Good Die Young. It is an incredibly powerful song, and you stop listening to me if you've never heard it, and just stop this video. I don't mind. Go pull up this song. It's really, really killer. It's dark though, and it really gets you thinking if you sit down between two speakers and you listen to the song or put on headphones. Don't worry, Mr. President. I am going to read part of this. Help's on the way. Your brothers are coming. There'll be hell to pay. Brothers? What brothers? What's this about hell? Tell them we're waiting. Keep coming. We'll get to them as well. Love Field is where his plane touched down, but it never did get back up off the ground. What a hard act to follow, second to none. They killed him on the altar of the rising sun. Play Misty for me and that old devil moon. Play Anything Goes in Memphis in June. Play Lonely at the Top and Lonely Are the Brave. Play it for Houdini spinning in his grave. Play Jelly Roll Morton, play Lucille, play Deep in a Dream, and play Driving Wheel. Play Midnight Sonata in F sharp, and A Key to the Highway for the King of the Harp. Play Marching Through Georgia and the Dummerotan's drums. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Play Darkness and Death Will Come When It Comes. Play Love or Leave Me by the great Bud Powell. Play The Blood-Stained Banner. Play Murder Most Foul. Yeah, it's an intense song. It's I think Bob Dylan could only write it, and it is really disturbing to listen to, honestly, but it's a killer song. Next up is an album by Bob Dylan called Blood on the Tracks, or a song from that album. The closing song, Blood on the Tracks, was an intensely personal record for Dylan. He was going through a breakup. His marriage was falling apart, and he seemed to put it on paper. He seemed to make a brilliant record out of it. How much of it is directly tied to him, who knows? But it's an incredible record, and it is classic for a reason. The ending song, the closing song, is Buckets of Rain. Now, some people would think that might be even a light song for an album that is as weighty and as heavy and as serious as Blood on the Tracks, but I've always loved it. I've always liked it to be a little bit lighter to close out that record, and to me it really works. There's just some nice rhymes he does and some nice visuals he paints. I like your smile and your fingertips, like the way that you move your hips. I like the cool way you look at me. Everything about you is bringing me misery. Little red wagon, little red bike. I ain't no monkey, but I know what I like. I like the way that you love me strong and slow. I'm taking you with me, honey baby, when I go. Life is sad, life is a bust. All you can do is do what you must. You do what you must do, and you do it well. I'll do it for you, honey baby. Can't you tell? Yeah, Bob Dylan, Buckets of Rain from 1974's Blood on the Tracks. And next up, the second to last song I'm going to talk about here today, as far as Bob Dylan's brilliant album closers, something he's an absolute master at, is the last song on Empire Burlesque. I have a huge problem with this album. I think this album is atrocious for the most part. I cannot stand the production techniques on this thing. Tight temptation to my heart and all the backup singers, and it's horrible. It's like a comedy record. It's like a parody of a parody of a parody of Dylan. There's some good songs on it. Actually, I think Emotionally Yours and I'll Remember You were done for there was a movie, Master Anonymous, that he did in 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. And the versions that were in that movie, and I believe on the soundtrack, were really good because they were stripped down. They weren't full of these awful 80s production techniques. When people talk about bad 80s production, they are talking about this record. It is a shit show. Okay. Why am I showing it? Because there's one song on this record that is not like any of the others. The story goes that Bob Dylan passed this woman in a hallway and wrote a song. And I don't know if he recorded it. He probably recorded it in his studio, but I like the idea that he recorded it in his hotel room or something. It's just him and an acoustic guitar, and he's on fire. And he's writing this beautiful song full of imagery. Patti Smith once said it was her favorite Bob Dylan song, or one of them. I think she said something about it that got me interested in it before I ever got this record. Because I remember getting this record and listening to it and wow, about ready to throw it in the trash. And then I remembered this song. So last verse. Oh, the French girl, she's in paradise, and a drunken man is at the wheel. Hunger pays a heavy price to the falling gods of speed and steel. Oh, time is short and the days are sweet, and passion rules the arrow that flies. A million faces at my feet, but all I see is dark eyes. Yeah, I love this song. Dark Eyes, Bob Dylan. If you haven't heard it, go listen to it. And let me know what you think of Empire Burlesque. The album has its fans. Some Dylan freaks love this album. I will never in a million years understand why, but they're out there. They're out there for sure. So anyway, if you've been watching this and kind of keeping track and realizing, that we're getting towards the end, I'm sure you're thinking of what songs, especially if you're a Dylan freak, I might mention. What would be the one song remaining that I would have to mention? And maybe you're thinking of something else, but I doubt it, because there is a mother of a song at the end of Highway 61 from 1965, his second album of the year, the one that cemented his place as a rock and roll guy, not just a folkie. Brilliant album, Highway 61, and absolutely surreal, otherworldly. How the hell did you write that song that ends this album? The beginning, the first verse. They're selling postcards of the hanging. They're painting the passports brown. The beauty parlor is filled with sailors. The circus is in town. Here comes the blind commissioner. They've got him in a trance. One hand is tied to the tightrope walker. The other is in his pants. And the riot squad, they're restless. They need somewhere to go. As Lady and I look out tonight from Desolation Row. The most chilling, this song is incredibly powerful, and it goes on for quite a while. I think it's like 8 or 9 minutes. But the end of it is, to me, stops you in my tracks. Like I said, some of these will absolutely do that. But this is like almost like he breaks the third wall or something. He comes right at you with this last there. Yes, I received your letter today about the time the doorknob broke. When you asked me how I was doing, was that some kind of joke? All these people that you mentioned, yes, I know them. They're quite lame. I had to rearrange their faces and give them all another name. Right now, I can't read too good. Don't send me no more letters. No, not unless you mail them from Desolation Row. Bob Dylan, the master at closing an album. These are 10 examples. And Desolation Row, if I was ranking them, would probably be at number one anyway. But it just happened to be that way in this not countdown. But go listen to Bob Dylan. Pay attention to how he closes out an album. Brilliant artist. So glad he's still with us. Can't wait to see what he does next. And I can't wait to go see A Complete Unknown one more time in the theater. So thanks, everyone.